Hi everyone, my name is Elijah Cruz and I'm here today to focus in on the importance of communication within the business of building materials, narrowing in here at Boise Cascade. I currently work for Boise's admin department. Within the presentation, I will highlight the benefits of communication as well as the best practices for effectiveness. The end goal is for you all to understand how impactful effective communication is on a business industry. Effective communication can lead to customer retention and satisfaction. If throughout the presentation you have questions, please feel free to stop me. Communication, what is it? Communication is defined as the process of understanding and sharing meaning. Communication, and there is 8 essential components that contribute to communication. So we start with source. The source, that is, it imagines and creates and sends the message. So first, you have to determine the message, what to say and how you say it. Now we go into message, which is the second component, and this is the stimulus or meaning produced by the source for the receiver or the audience. The message consists of the way you say it. So with your tone of voice, with your body language, and even sometimes your appearance. Next is the channel. The channel is the way in which a message or even messages between source and receiver travel. Spoken channels include face-to-face conversation. This can be on a telephone, this can be, speeches, or even voicemail messages that you might leave for somebody. Written channels include letters, memos, as we had done within the class, and even a newspaper can be a channel of communication. Moving on to the receiver receives the message from the source, analyzing and interpreting the message both ways, so unintended and intended by the source. This is where feedback comes in. So when you respond to the source, intentionally or unintentionally, you are giving feedback. This can be done with, nonverbal communication as well. So you might, respond to someone like your boss. You have a meeting and they tell you the meeting's at 3:00. You might, huff and puff, or you might roll your eyes or cross your arms. This is giving, the message back to the source as you're moody about it and you don't want to do the meeting. So this is where feedback comes in. That's unintentional. And then intentional is you're like, okay, yep, I have a meeting. Like you're making it clear. The following component is the environment. The environment is the atmosphere, physical and physiological, where you can send and receive messages. The environment includes tables, chairs, sound equipment, and even lighting. This brings context into play, which is another essential component. Context of the communication involves setting, scene, and expectations of those individuals whom are involved. Business suits, emotional cues that directly or indirectly influences expectations of an individual. That's context. Interference is our final component. Anything that blocks or changes the source's intended meaning of the message is interference. So the picture displayed here on the screen, we have the Boise communication tree. Each branch represents a different department within the company. So we have administration, we have product managers, inside sales, material handlers, outside sales, and transportation. They all form the communication that goes on within Boise Cascade. Communication styles. We have 4 different types of communication styles, starting with intuitive communication, unemotional, and freeform. They want the bottom line communications that are short and to the point, and they don't like to have their time wasted. So they also enjoy the creative side of their work. They thrive when thinking outside of the box, but they are most interested in the long-term vision of any project rather than any, minute details. Analytical communication, unemotional but linear. They want confident communications that include hard facts and numbers. They prioritize logic and thoughtfulness. They like complex data rather than emotional appeal. Functional communication, emotional and linear, communication style relies on step-by-step instructions and regular feedback in order for them to stay on track. Personal communication, emotional and freeform. They want to establish an interpersonal relationship. They use emotional language in an informal, friendly, and warm way that gets them involved in talking about impacted feelings. After completing the assessment, self-style communication assessment, it has been determined that I am a personal communicator. As a personal communicator, you value emotional language and connection, and use that as your mode of discovering what others are really thinking. You find value in assessing not just how people think, but how they feel. You tend to be a good listener and diplomat. You can smooth over conflicts, and you're typically concerned with the health of numerous relationships. Importance. Communication styles define the ways we give and receive information. No one style of communication is inherently better than another, but sometimes picking the wrong type of communication for a particular conversation or audience can negatively impact how your ideas and messages are received. This can range from one person to 1,000. Communication contexts. There are 5 different communication contexts, starting with intrapersonal communication. This involves one person, so it's often called self-talk. Interpersonal communication normally involves 2 people and can range from intimate and very personal to formal and impersonal. Group communication. This is a dynamic process where a small number of people engage in a conversation. Group communication is generally defined as involving 3 to 8 people. The larger the group, the more likely it is to break down into smaller groups. We have public communication, where one person speaks to a group of people. The same is true of public written communication, where one person writes to a large group of people. This can be done with an email. This can be done with public speaking. Moving on to mass communication. Involves sending a single message to a group. It allows us to communicate our message to a large number of people, but we are limited in our ability to tailor our message to specific audiences, groups, or individuals. Strengths and weaknesses within verbal business communication. From the 5 types of communication contexts, I believe my biggest strength would be intrapersonal communication. Again, intrapersonal involves one person. It's called self-talk. Donna's book on intrapersonal communication explains how, as we use language to reflect on our own experiences, we talk ourselves through situations. Reason being is I view myself as a more reserved, introverted person. Public communication has always been a weakness of mine because my anxiety kicks in and I forget my intended message for my audience. Recommendations for improvement is practice. You just have to keep practicing, whether that's in a mirror, to your family. Practice, practice. Strengths and weaknesses with written business communication. A strength is sweating the small stuff. This means I pay attention to the small details because it really is the little things that are important. Emails with errors can cause confusion or misinterpretation. To overcome situations where small details are key, being able to set aside time to self-edit and correct yourself would make all the difference. This allows for any errors to be caught well before anyone else will. Revisions are also encouraged to improve writing and ensure my message is clear. And I do believe this is one of my biggest written communication strengths. Moving to the weakness, bypassing involves the misunderstanding that occurs when the receiver completely misses the source's intended meaning. Each person interprets words differently within context, so ensuring that they understand your intended message is key for effective communication. I struggle with using simple wording, believe it or not, being that I always assume everyone will understand where I come from and what I mean. Overcoming this can be done by recognizing who my intended audience is and will be during my writing process. This will then allow for me to select different words that they will interpret correctly to understand my message further. Focus. I want you guys as the audience to focus upon and provide feedback. Effective communication to ensure better business. Boise Cascade background. This wholesale distributor shares many locations throughout the U.S., and communication is an essential part of everyday business. From ensuring safety to relaying important messages across to all employees in a timely manner. The challenges faced range from customers demanding faster delivery of product, freight rates, price changes, as well as safety conditions. Other factors include the time zone differences, as well as specific language such as jargon that the company uses to communicate with one another. Discussing these issues on a both small and large scale will enhance the importance of communication throughout the company. Boise Cascade purpose. The purpose of Boise Cascade as a leading manufacturer and distributor of building materials is to bring people, products, and services together to build strong homes, businesses, and communities that stand the test of time. Therefore, communication runs through every action of each department within the company. Being able to communicate effectively can improve business from both the standpoint of the customer and his coworkers. Whether that person is in person, on the phone, verbal communication, through an email or document, written communication, or even videos, visual communication. Having nearly 60 locations throughout the U.S. requires everyone to have the same understanding and follow the same protocols throughout each branch. It starts with the onboarding process, followed by specific language and jargon of your department, to ensuring safety, always, to even communicating with yard guys for pulling orders. If at some point communication is lacking in one area, this leads to different problems that can potentially formulate within the production of business and drastically affect the company. Practices, proposals. Communication is key to your success. Good communication equals good business. Once that communication starts to diminish and become uneasy or unclear, communication in the company will fare entirely. Business communication is important with every minor detail that forms the business of Boise Cascade. Without it, the managers, VPs, regional marketer VPs, and your everyday employees will not be able to meet the goals for the company. This must be done as a team, and if the team is unable to work together due to lack of communication, there is a risk for failure. Identification. The first step to improving situations within a business is to identify where the weakest link of communication is occurring. There are many tools that can be used to help gain the correct information that you need to determine where changes need to be implemented. So this can be done from different forms, like a simple checklist each manager has to submit to evaluate performances, to holding different team meetings focusing on concerns that everyone has within the company. With teams in place, this helps on a larger scale of the business view in a sense that the regional VPs do not have to constantly worry if things are being handled. Instead, they are able to delegate and have specific groups get specific goals accomplished. With having to meet certain goals, such as pulling X number of orders for the day, creating credits, invoicing, executing customer sales effectively, having a group of people who support one another will allow for the team members to grow and work together to solve issues. Therefore, this increases productivity. At Boise, every department is essentially a team. The admin group, the sales group, the loaders, the drivers. We all have to work together in order for business to be handled and for goals to be accomplished. Preventing misunderstandings and conflicts is a key importance of having effective